we're back with Kayla from Ontario Landlords Watch, and today we're going to be discussing what to do and maybe best practices or approaches when it comes to enforcing rules and regulations, how to handle, tenant relationships, what's considered reasonable and what's considered necessary to be explicit about in that lease agreement.
Detail. Open communication, laying down the rules before they come in so that you can really reiterate that with the tenants as you're dealing with them verbally, again through writing, and again through the landlord and tenant board. A great way for you to show to the adjudicator that you gave a verbal warning, you gave a written warning, and now you're at the landlord and tenant board because you're at the end of your rope. You are running a business, you're not running a daycare.
What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and we're back with Kayla from Ontario Landlords Watch, and today we're going to be discussing what to do and maybe best practices or approaches when it comes to enforcing rules and regulations, or even just some of the basic rules in the RTA. So, Kayla, and this is definitely a bigger concern for new real estate investors, I think, but I'm sure a lot of experienced investors could learn a thing or two as well about just how to handle, tenant relationships, right? So let's talk about if there's an issue going on in the property. Maybe you can give us a couple examples of common ones you see landlords or property managers encountering. And then what's the actual best way to approach it? Because I think sometimes real estate investors, they're too emotionally attached to their property and they immediately want to try and go nuclear as their solution rather than maybe negotiate or having discussions.
That's exactly, Matt. It's what it is. And you know what? It could all be preventable. You know, when you get your concept of, putting your rental ad on Marketplace or Kijiji and getting to put in exactly what you're looking for in a tenant, you don't put that. You're going to put what your unit has to offer. Then that's going to attract the type of tenants. And then let's say they like the unit. They want to sign that lease. Meet them at the property, walk them through that property, make them let them educate them and make sure that they know the rules and the procedures of the property, and make sure that you have it included within your standard lease or your addendums. Once you get yourself into that lease and, they sign it and they're adults and it's a legal binding contract, but they don't follow it, such as, hey, you got to pick up your dog poop, right? So this is something where, a lot of problems, especially if you have like multi-units. So if you're getting yourselves into multi-units, you have duplexes happening, the upstairs tenant has a dog and the downstairs tenants have a dog, but they're saying that one upstairs tenant's dog their poop is not being picked up. So the downstairs person calls property standards, so this is now when property standards are calling in because there's obviously been a complaint. They call the landlord and be like, okay, you need to deal with this. So now ideally it's like, we're not going to be taking poop off the property and trying to determine whose poop it is. So a lot of it has to come down to, communication verbally first with all tenants at the property. Obviously this is a problem. Obviously there's a complaint from the city. So now I have to make sure that we're addressing it to make sure that all people are happy at the property. But at the same time, I'm not here to be your poop police. So I'm going to give you a verbal warning that all poop needs to be picked up automatically, right away, as soon as it's done. We're not going to keep it here for 2 days or 3 days or just a week, and then you're going to clean it all up. And if you can't do that, then we have to prevent you from, being able to use the backyard. So you're doing that verbally situation. Then if they don't listen again, now you're going to give them a written letter, showing that, as of on this date, this is when I spoke with you and the other tenants at the property to discuss this matter. And then this is where you have failed to comply, and after you agreed that you will stop this type of behavior. Now it's in a letter format. Now it's like they're still doing it. You're still getting calls. You're still either having property standards calling you. Now you get into the landlord and tenant board. Now you're like, okay, I've already tried to show that we try to be fair. We try to be reasonable. You're not listening. Now what I have to do, I have to file the proper forms. And this, for me, would be a great way for you to show to the adjudicator that you gave a verbal warning, you gave a written warning, and now you're at the landlord and tenant board because you're at the end of your rope. You are running a business. You're not running a daycare, so we can't be continuing to babysit people who are failing to follow the rules and the procedures of the property. Similar to, hey, here's your property. It's a 3-bedroom unit. Here's the common areas. It's the backyard, it's the front yard, and it's the garage, because that garage is a shared accommodation for the third unit, which is an emergency exit. Well, that upstairs tenant decides to take over that garage as their own personal space. They are now creating a whole workshop in that whole personal space. They've now taken up the shared laundry area and putting contents, their belongings, on top of the washer and dryer. And again, you go through that step-by-step process. We're going to do this verbally or in writing, and then we're going to do it in writing again, and then we're going to go to the landlord and tenant board. So it can show that you are showing that here's the step-by-step process. I'm going to document as much pictures as I possibly can and videos in order to show them that this is obviously a problem, especially for, going back to the original example of dog feces. Like that in itself, if you start to look at, you need to address that right away, because not only is dog feces more of a concept of a germ and gross and disgusting, but it also is the #1 food source for rodents. So if you have your tenant who is, having a dog and they're pooping all over the place and they're not picking it up, but then they complain about rodents, it's like, whoa, 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 like let's work together here, because you do have to make sure that is being picked up so that we can prevent rodents from coming to the property. And if they come close to the property, then the chances are they're going to try to come into the properties. So we really want to work ourselves into that open communication, laying down the rules before they come in, so that you can really reiterate that with the tenants as you're dealing with them verbally, again through writing, and again through the landlord and tenant board.
Yeah, I appreciate you laying that out for us. And so I guess circling back to what you started with, laying out the rules for them clearly at the start, how explicit do we need to be in that lease agreement? Do I need to literally have a line about picking up your dog poop in the lease agreement, or, what's considered reasonable and what's considered necessary to be explicit about in that lease agreement?
Detail, detail, detail. I think that's what really messes us up. We think that it's a concept of, if you have a pet, you need to make sure that you're taking care of them, that you're picking up from them, that you're keeping the dog on a leash at all times. And not even that, even if it's in the lease, you got to get a sign. You have to put a sign on your property now these days in order to say, keep your dog on a leash at all times on the property, and also make sure that you pick up after your pet. This is how crazy the landlord and tenant board world has gotten, because so many people get to, it wasn't me, it was a neighbor and somebody was walking their dog. And then now you're like, okay, well, do I have to get cameras? Do I have to get cameras on the building now to prove that you are lying? Where the concept is of making sure that you're getting the type of tenant and asking them questions throughout your tenant screening process to find out, are they capable of lying to you? Because you can catch them in a small lie. And are they going to continue to keep lying to you, small or big, in the future? So it's always going to be about playing that hard tenant screening, police officer almost, if you want to call it, and ask them questions to see if you can get them to tell you the truth, or are they telling you a lie? And that's the concept where you need to make sure that through that tenancy screening part is that you are able to say, these are my rules. This is what's going to happen. I'm a really good person to get along with. I'm very open. I'm available all times. I just need you to be open, and I need you to be honest with me. And they'd be like, oh, it's great. It's great. But if you don't, this is the other side of me, or this is my good cop, bad cop. We always tell people when you're in real estate, you always have your property management or landlord, you have a good cop, bad cop. So someone's coming in as the good cop, but then when they stop listening to the good cop, you got to bring in the bad cop. Just so that you can have something to go back on, where if you are, talking to a tenant, and let's say that you're not sure about something, you could be like, let me go back and talk to this person, right? So it's not so much that you have to go back and talk to that person, it's just that you really want to have time to do some more research and more work before you give them an answer to what they're asking from you, right?
Yeah, I appreciate you laying that out for us. And I guess, do you have any tips when it comes to screening for tenants? And I know landlords need to be careful these days in regards to the exact processes or questions you ask when screening tenants. I know for myself, I don't do any of my day-to-day property management anymore, but when I did, one of the big things I would focus on was just having conversations, because oftentimes, like when you're showing the unit and you're just kind of, having that general conversation with a tenant, it's a lot easier to break down any barriers. There's maybe a little bit less of a guard up, especially when they're viewing the property as well, because they're also kind of taking in everything that is the new apartment they're potentially going to rent. So any tips for landlords when screening tenants?
Yeah, it's get off your it's almost like that personal attachment that we have to our property. We're running it like a business. So as a business, you would sit down and you would interview people based on the job and the questions that you have. I feel that with rentals and screening your tenants through the rental process is that you're getting off the title, so to speak, and just trying to act like their friend. If you wanted to be their friend, how would you talk to that person? Get them off the normal, why do you want to move? Where do you work? Do you have any pets? How many people are living here? You can ask them great questions in order to get them opening up to you and telling you the type of information that you are looking to receive from asking questions that you're trying not to, because you want to be careful that you're not asking a question that they might twist and turn and say that you never accepted them based on that type of information, right? So that's why another thing is to be cautious. But as you're getting your questions to them, is like, oh, hey, is it just the two of you who are going to be living here? And then that way you can kind of meet all of the people that are obviously going to be potentially moving into the place. And they're like, no, it's going to be me and my brother or my sister or whatnot. Then you get into the concept of, why are you moving? Or have you been looking at other properties? What type of properties have you been seeing? What did you think about your last landlord? Were they good? And you can start to see if they're already complaining about their last landlord. And I know, guys, there's all landlords are not good. All tenants are not bad. We have that concept that we need to work at and honestly believe them when they will tell you that their last landlord was horrible. But at the same time, it's like, well, how long did they live there? And how long was the landlord horrible for? So you want to see, how did that communication break down, and could your relationship break down? And if so, what would that tenant do? But also be cautious, like I'm finding out situations where, we have a property for rent. We had somebody that had called us and they're like, hey, I end up having this property lined up. It was a sublet agreement, but then they canceled on me at the last time and they took my money, and I went to the police officers and I told them, what was happening, but because I sent them an email money transfer, I will have to go to court in order to do so. And I'm like, oh no. So, oh, you want to know if you can get in without first and last month's rent? Yeah, just because of the situation. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm managing these properties for another landlord. I do require first and last month's rent, but have you checked out other government agencies to help you out with last month's rent? And they're like, yeah, we went there, but they only want to give us $750. And I'm like, okay. And what's the landlord's name? I'm like, do you want me to call them, see if I can get your money back? No, we're just gonna go through the court route. I'm like, oh, okay. And they're like, so you guys still in your current place? No, we're actually in a motel right now because we put all of our stuff in storage. So you can see that things were not making sense. One, $750 for last month's rent deposit. That's coming from, a government agency for one person. And I was talking to two people on the phone. Number two is that you're inside of a shelter and now you're calling and telling me that you want to pay me more for this $1,850 two-bedroom apartment in a bottom of a property. I'm like, whoa, it's already high enough, buddy. Now you want to pay me more? My flags are already up there. Oh, they're handy. They're also handy. They want to start putting more work into it to see that, oh, well, now you don't have to pay for a maintenance guy. You're going to want to accept us and we can do the maintenance for you. So we see that we're trying to save you some money. It's some red flags that you want to work there. And for the concept that you're living in a motel that you are only, because that job or that property didn't pan out because the landlord had taken your money and you refuse to get someone's help into to retrieving that money back, that's another red flag that I would want to work with, right? So obviously we're looking at our concept that we do have good tenants. We do have good tenants that go bad, and we do have bad tenants who are just abusing the system. So you're going to have multiple different questions and different ways to interpret what they're telling you, and put your gut, because your gut is going to really bring you to that finish line in order to protecting the tenants. Now, let's say that you don't get the good tenant that you thought you were going with based on everything, or you had a good tenant go bad. You got to make sure that you're reading the landlord and tenant board like it's Facebook. Too bad we didn't have that. Here's a Facebook world for landlord and tenant board, but they do have Navigate tribunals Ontario now, so that if you have a situation, it can kind of point to some resources. But even though your paperwork at the landlord and tenant board is what it is, you still have to wait for your judgment day, because that adjudicators, there's no consistency. And that's what we're doing as an organization to really help the concept of pushing some consistency within the landlord and tenant board in order to know what we can expect. Because right now, even an N11, and if anyone knows an N11, it's the tenant and the landlord agreeing to end a tenancy, that it doesn't even have ground. And that's why we did a Facebook Live talking about one of our landlords who weren't able to grant their eviction because of an N11. They didn't delay it, they just refused it. This is where it's like all forms are now up in the air at the landlord and tenant board. It's going to be the draw of out of a hat to find out, where you see your faith and your future based on, can you remove a tenant from your property if they are interfering with other tenants and have other tenants leaving, or if they're not paying rent. We're very nervous on what is happening. That's why we have to do as much as we can to connect each other together and to be a part of a community, in order so that it's not so hard to give the news out to the members now, because I spent my time calling people on Kijiji when the water billing fiasco was happening. Mm-hmm. Now we can make a post and it can go into many landlord groups across social media, and this is great and that's phenomenal, and you can see how we've grown over the 10 years.
Yeah, really appreciate you sharing all that, and really appreciate everything you've done for Ontario landlords specifically. And so if people want to learn more, if they want to get involved in the community, what's the best way to do so?
They can definitely send a request to Ontario Landlords Watch members. Tell in the message, it will ask, how did you hear about us? Make sure you put Matt's name. Helps you get in a little bit quicker. Just because we're very on a mission to really try to create a fair and balanced housing system that protects good landlords, good tenants, and taxpayers. And we don't want anyone in, like, everyone's going to be special. The tenants activists, they have their mission and their goals, and I like to listen to that because it could help me as I'm advocating, because I do want to help our good tenants that are out there as well. But always make sure that you mention Matt, and we'll get you in as soon as we possibly can. And then you can also, friend request me on Facebook, and hopefully I see it, because Facebook is a little weird these days. I don't know. I have to go in every so many often. I'm like, I have friend. Oh, sorry. Here you go. So I'm not ignoring you. I just got to wait for the request to ding me to give me that notification.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have links to everything Kayla's talking about in the video description down below, guys. Really do encourage you to join the Ontario Landlords Watch Facebook group, filled with just tons of real life investors and real life landlords that are just trying to navigate sometimes the rough waters out there in regards to tenants, evictions, and just all the rules these days. So again, really appreciate everything you do, Kayla.
Thanks, Matt. And you know what, guys, I can't believe I didn't even mention it through the tenant screening, but you guys will need to look up landlordcreditbureau.ca. They do a tenancy search. You can get your credit checks now from them. Get in there and do those checks. So many landlords, this is not a spit and a handshake anymore. You have to make sure that you're doing everything in your power in order to make sure you're getting someone that is going to treat your property with respect, treat you and your other tenants with respect, and make sure that they do have the credentials in order to fulfill their obligations on the rent, so that you don't fall apart in the mess of what they created, right? So making sure that you check that out, and our members will get a discount for their premium membership, but there is a free basic membership as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Kayla.
Thanks, Matt.